All right, folks, here we go. Last stream before Christmas. For those of you that partake in that kind of thing, big topic for today is minimum viable everything. One of my favorite things. I enjoyed it. We came up with it many years ago, and I've used it on and off throughout the past half decade or so. Prior to getting into that, though, I want to talk about our Walter points. So you will see below the chat message text entry box a little picture of Walter. You now earn Walter points for being in the stream, commenting, subscribing, following, all those things. You can do cool stuff with those. One of my favorites is to modify a single emote. So I like to pick Walter. Then I like to give him some sunglasses. So now you'll see Walter has sunglasses. How useful is that? I don't know, but it's pretty cool. Let's see what else we can do to Walter, since he's the guy. Oh, we gotta give him reindeer. Yep, reindeer. That reindeer. Yep. What else? Yeah, we'll give him a Santa hat. Okay, so now we have those three. I don't know how long they're useful or how long they're usable. Walter emotes with sunglasses and deal with it. As Rudolph with some antlers, a shiny red nose, and with a Santa hat. What's that time of year? Use those emotes. I think you can. I hope you can. Good morning is right, VA Agile. Very good morning to you. All the way from Australia. So welcome. Now that I know you're here, VA Agile, as I believe our most dedicated viewer. Thank you for that. I don't know who can challenge you for that. I mean, I don't know anybody else that wakes up or stays up as late as you do to swing in and chat. So I appreciate it greatly. Thank you a bunch. Minimum viable everything, aka MVX. I had a blog post I wrote about this probably 5 or 6 years ago, but it has since been taken down since I left that company. I don't know why they took it down. It was a fantastic post, but they took our entire technical blog down. So there's that. How did I get to minimum viable everything? I had a unique opportunity to build an organization from scratch. In that scenario, we had all of our development was offshore. We just received a large investment, $100 million. And part of that investment was I think it was a requirement. I think it was more than a request. I think it was a requirement that the company go with agile software development principles. And that meant co-locating the development team with the rest of the business. Makes sense. So I was hired to be the person to onshore all of our development. And that was a unique opportunity because we got to do everything from scratch. We built a product from scratch, we built a team from scratch, and we built a process from scratch. Oh man, Agile Biker's angry. Well, we're talking minimum viable everything. I will give you the deal with it, Walter. Agile Biker. Minimum viable everything. So as we went about that, what I found was that we were over engineering and over architecting our processes and our organizational approaches to many things. But we would hold very firm to, we need to build an MVP. We need to ship the least amount of features required to get users using it. And I had this really great group of leaders within the organization. We were really wrestling with this problem. Like, why are we making it harder than it needs to be? And I don't remember the genesis of it, but we got into a discussion about why don't we use the basic principles that we apply to the other things that we do? We use Scrum. Let's just apply Scrum in every direction we can. and MVP. Why not apply that to everything that we do? So that evolved into what we then termed MVX, where we took the minimum viable approach to everything, to architecture, to organizational structure, to, gosh, I have a slide that rattles off like 10 things that we applied it to everything. And what that gave us was it gave us a way to look at things and ask ourselves, what's the least amount of change that we can introduce to solve the problem we have? So in answering that question, the first thing we had to do was actually define the problem that we have. And that was often the biggest problem, because we found that we were solving problems we didn't actually have yet. We started solving problems we thought we were going to have, but had not yet presented themselves because we weren't a large enough org yet. So we didn't need that hierarchy of people. We didn't need that extra layer of code reviews because we didn't have that weight yet as an organization. We expected that as we grew, as we went from 5 people to 20 people to 70 people, that new challenges would present themselves. And we found that we were often addressing challenges way out in the future that we assumed would happen. Some of them did, some of them didn't. We took a very drastic approach of only solving the problems we have today. And our only way to solve those problems was to do the least amount of change required to address that single problem. Sounds simple. I get it. But in reality, it's harder because of the way humans work. We've yet to figure out, and this is actually a discussion topic that Bob and I had on a recent podcast about keeping it simple, about why do we naturally over engineer things? Why is it perennially a battle to not do that? Even us as agilists, as lean leaders, you will find yourself over engineering things. I haven't unlocked why yet. I don't know what the thing is. I'm sure somebody on the stream is going to reference text from a book that explains why, and I'm sure that I will not have read it. So there's that. I think that's our next custom emoji. Will be do you even read, bro? Emoji. I'm pretty sure everybody could use that against me in every stream. I get it, Agile Biker. And I think you'll often find that Agile, the best developers are lazy developers. There's a fine balance between laziness and still doing it well. Why is that? Why is that sad? Why am I not allowed to laugh? It's a Friday. The weather's nice. Holidays are happening soon. My kids are off of school in about 52 minutes. So that's good and bad. Oh, I can, number one, you can always laugh at your own joke. And number two, I need to introduce you to my father-in-law. No one in this universe likes their jokes more than he does. He will retell the joke dozens of times, and he will laugh more each time he tells it. Which means my wife does the same thing, and now my kids do the same thing. Everybody in my family loves their own jokes, and we all get it from Grandpa Denny. And no, Agile Biker, you can't use that. It's in a book somewhere. Like, nice try. You'd have to actually reference it. You can't say in a book somewhere. That's cheating. Nice try. I appreciate it, though. Good. You don't sound angry. You sound, well, I guess you're taking these little jabs at me here. So this is, sourced in anger. So, minimum viable everything. That's something that has re-entered the front of my mind of late in my day job as I start to, Frankie, okay, whatever, however you want to label it, as I start to figure out how we take everything to the next level. And I just hit the pause button over the past week and a half and really spent time like just watching and listening. And I just started to identify things that felt like they were too much, like we over engineered things. So then the right approach is to go ask why we do these things. One of these, I put this in front of a group of directors that we have that are fantastic. And I said, hey, I'm getting worried that we're over engineering things. I don't understand why we did these two things, why we added these two bits to our process. And in the end, I desperately wanted to be wrong. I desperately wanted to have them educate me on, we made these changes because of this, and we made these changes because of this. And like, okay, makes sense. And that's what happened. So in the end, one of the things that we talked about is how do we better educate everyone on the why behind the changes that we're making? Because I'm sure if I had the question, I'm sure a half a dozen other people had that question, and there was no reason for that question to exist. And thanks for the follow, Visceral. Good to have you. You got cranky Agile Biker today. Are you really, like, you're in and out like that? For real? Well, here, let me give you a Santa Walter then. Visceral, thanks for dropping by. For those of you that have asked, because I get asked quite often, yes, I will be streaming next week. I will also be streaming the week after that. So the Friday after Christmas and the Friday after New Year's, yes, I will be on. I can't tell you how long. Yeah, you know what? It's interesting to see what work networks block Twitch. It's interesting. There are some viewers that have it blocked and they end up having to stream it on their phone. So today, Visceral, we're talking about minimum viable everything. Minimum viable product is something a lot of people deal with, but I've found it very useful in the past and even yesterday, I guess that counts as the past, to apply that to everything that we do. One of the triggers for that was Spotify, who I'm a huge fan of, and they had this concept of minimum viable bureaucracy. And that's where, for those of you that have been on for a little while, as I talked about, what's the least amount of change you can introduce to solve the problem that you have. That was the thing that first tipped me over the edge of, hey, wait a minute, maybe this minimum viable thing applies to more than just a product. So I thought, okay, Spotify, they try and change the least amount of things and run a little test, do an experiment, and find out what's working, what's not. Where else can I apply that? I found that we were architecting the crap out of things. So what else can we, our architecture, our organization, our bureaucracy, our process, the product itself, you name it, any problem, anything, any system that you have, you can apply that principle to. And I found it insanely helpful. Insanely helpful in keeping our natural, irrational desire to overcomplicate things. That's just something that I find that we do. I'm searching for a reason why we do that, but it seems to be human engineer types like to do that. Is it just the complexity that we value, that we feel as if the more complexity we create, the more valuable we are, when in reality the opposite is true. That's good, Visceral. Yeah, it's one of those things that's just, if you hit the pause button, as I was talking, I think before you joined, was over the past week and a half, I just hit the pause button on everything. And I sat, watched, and listened. And I had this list of things that I started to question of why do we do that? Around why did we make it so complex? Does it need to be complex? And I then traveled around the organization asking people, why do we do this like this? It feels really complex, but I don't understand all of the bits and details about it. So explain to me why we do it like this instead of a simpler approach. Oftentimes, it usually goes one of two ways. One is, oh, okay, cool. Here, I'll explain. We have to do this, this, and this because we have these constraints and this business requirement and these rules that cause this, and there's like some legal issues, blah, blah, blah. Or you get the head scratch and it's, I don't know. We've kind of always done it that way. That's when you win. That's when you get that, okay, cool. So we probably don't need to do it then, and just run an experiment. And that's the key thing, that when you start changing processes or you start suggesting edits to the way things are done, people often get into this panic mode about, oh my gosh, you're changing things. It will never be the same and we're doomed. When in reality, all you need to do is frame it as, let's run an experiment of not doing that thing for a week or 2 weeks or a month or whatever, and let's see what breaks. Did we make our lives better? Or did we make our lives worse? Maybe we'll actually learn that we're doing that thing for a reason, but the people that knew that reason are gone. So we had to discover it ourselves. So that's one of those powerful tools that I found to be super helpful in just making everybody's lives less challenging at work, because we tend to do that. Okay, we're going to take a 30-second break. The reason we take 30-second breaks is to minimize the pre-roll. So for those of you Visceral, I'm assuming when you joined, you were subjected to a pre-roll. Every time I run a 30-second ad, that stops the pre-roll ad for like 10 minutes. So what I'd ask of you guys during this 30 seconds is, if you are seeing an ad, or if you're not, jot down a question that you'd like to answer. So Visceral, one of the things that this stream is all about is answering questions. I have zero intent to sit up here and talk for an hour. I can do it. I don't think it adds as much value as answering whatever questions may have. So jot down that question, drop it in chat, and we'll try and help each other out. Anything, right? About process, about coding, about you name it. We've had some high school kids come and ask about test preparation. Whatever. All right, I'll see you in 30. Okay, we are back. I've been doing the stream for a year and a half. Yeah, about a year and a half now. And I've flip-flopped times. I've done different days, different times as my work and personal schedule adjusted. We've landed on this Friday morning thing. Thank you to VA Agile for being up at an early Saturday morning, being here. But for the past, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, it's been Friday mornings, 11 a.m. Guess who calls me at 10:59? Probably the person closest to me in the whole universe, my wife. The countdown's going for the stream, and I say, hey, you got 53 seconds before the stream goes live. and she had that oh crap moment. That, all right, I'll see you, bye. So it's just funny to me that happened. Grace Dang, welcome. Amen, Visceral. That's the thing, is that I found that really good agile coaches and scrum masters ask that question a bunch. And I had this fantastic agile coach that really really kept me in check, because I'm an engineer at heart. I grew up a coder, so I have that weird thing where I overcomplicate things. And the number of times he would like sit me down and say, Josh, that's cool that you're trying to do that, but what problem do we have right now that this solves? And the number of times that was a gut punch to me as a leader, standing up in front of this 75 to 100 person org saying, hey, we need to do the least amount possible to solve this problem, then I am the bad guy doing that. But it was super helpful to have somebody do that. So the best way for your organization to become really successful is to have a bunch of people that are willing to sit down and ask each other questions. And the key is to not make an assumption that we're doing that for dumb reasons. That's when things go bad. Just assume there's things you don't know. Start asking questions, trying to educate. I even set the table of, hey, I see this thing. I don't understand why we're doing it, but you're closer to it. So help me understand what I don't know. Just put it on the table. Get it out there and say, it's clear I don't know something. And like I said, one of two things happen. One is that person says, oh, well, here, let me explain. We do this because of this, and here's why. And it was like, oh, okay, cool. High five, let's go. Or you get the head scratch. I don't know. We should probably figure that out. So that's when you run the experiment and try and change things. Okay, so Craystang, resource managed an agile project where you need different resources during the project. So I'm going to paint a picture. You tell me if I've got it mostly right. I'm making up a scenario. I'm sure I'm not going to get the exact scenario right, but you're working on a new product or something, and you need to build a back end, say an API that hits a database. You need to build a web front end, and you need to build mobile apps. So you have these different skills that are needed across the organization to deliver on the thing we're trying to ship as a company. So that's my assumption. I'm going to start talking to that situation. Correct me if I'm missing the mark. The way I've handled things like that is I've treated each one of those instances as a product. So the back end is a product. There's an API that gets consumed by the web front end and also by the mobile apps, and maybe by partners, customers, whatever it may be. So I treat those as individual products. They have their own repos, they have their own Jira backlogs, they have their own product managers, product owners. Sure. Similar thing. Like a Windows app or whatever the cross-platform thing is. I can't think of the cross-platform app development. Because in the end, each one of those has different customers. That API has a set of customers that are your internal apps, maybe your partners, maybe some external apps. So I like to have a team that's focused on building that and maximizing the value of that. Then I have a web team that has its own set of customers, that there are users. Web users are often different than mobile app users, or maybe a native Windows app user. Oftentimes they are, maybe they're not. If they're not, then you start to think about, can I build my teams that are cross-functional, or can I use a technology where I can write it once and have it deployable to all of these various endpoints? So for instance, one of the things I do on Mondays and Fridays is I work on a startup that I'm running with, and I'm using React Native that allows me to write one code base and then deploy to iOS and Android. So I would look at the skill sets you have as an organization. I would form teams around a product and the customers that they serve and the skill sets. One of the ways that can go wrong is you end up to create a silo. I'm a huge fan of truly cross-functional teams that can deliver end-to-end value. So that's a slippery slope, the approach that I talked about. You can get to where there's these silos and these barriers and there's major dependencies. You gotta be really careful about that. I've also done it where API development and web app development was done in the same team. So it depends, to me, it depends on what your primary product is, who your customer is, why are you building an API? Do you really need an API? Sometimes we reflexively create that. But is your backend really going to be consumed by more than one product or by more than one technology? If not, is that a complexity that you really need? So that's the approach that I would take. But you got to be really careful to not create the silos where there are these hard dependencies of things. So I feel like I'm giving you a wishy-washy answer. Like I'm saying one thing and then I'm saying something different. But the key driver for me would be a deeper understanding of what the product is. And if you get value from having the API separated, then that's probably a good move. But if having a separate API team gives you value, then do that. But if not, don't. Because you'll be, hey, thanks for the notice there, Visceral. That'll be one of those things where, again, we overcomplicate things necessarily when we maybe shouldn't. So a question, Christang, what is the business driver for having a native Windows app and a web version? Is it these are legacy products and we're just carrying forward? And I said Christang, it's Christang. I should learn to read. and correct me next time. You're like, dude, it's Christang, not Christang. So yeah, that would be something that I think would push me in one of the two directions that I talked about. My preference is to always have a full stack team that can deliver value to the customer. Now, if you have, like I talked about, a diverse set of customers where there's an API that really is part of your product that feeds your partners, your customers, and integrations that they have, your Windows app, your web app, your mobile app, your TV app, your whatever, then there might be tremendous value in treating that API as a product and having a team that does that and maximizes the value of that. So, Kraystang, the thing that I would go back to is why do we have the two platforms? What is the business value that this complexity delivers on? So we have this complexity of we have the Win app in C++, and we also have the web app. I totally get long-term planning. Most long-term plans are a fallacy anyways. So yeah, one of the things that we do, take a jog, is we use a big room planning version of SAFe. That's where we identify dependencies across teams. Roblox crossplay. Oh man, okay. My kids have played a lot of Roblox. A lot of Roblox. Is it Roblox or is it like Roblox? Okay. So that's so one of the things that I try to do in aligning orgs. Actually, let me finish the statement I was making in response to Jago's response. We use a big room planning approach similar to SAFe, not copied from SAFe, similar to SAFe. And we use that so that teams can forecast out the next 6 sprints. In doing so, it enables us to see those cross dependencies across teams. One of the primary drivers for us is the DevOps team. So the DevOps team for us was having a lot of troubles being caught off on their heels and not knowing that there were things that were coming that teams were going to need: a new environment, a new database, a new deployment, a new whatever it might be. So we use BRP, big room planning, and this forecast to inform all of the other teams across our org. Hey, here's the things that we're building, and here's the things we think we'll need from you. So we do that. We share the forecast for the next 6 sprints. And then that allows everybody to recast the forecast based on what they learned in that update from across the other team. So it helps when there is a silo type situation. It helps inform others of, hey, we're going to need you, and here's when we think we'll need you. So that way teams can plan appropriately, be proactive instead of reactive. Everybody's happier, less frustrated, all those things. Okay. So in organizational building, what I work to do is I work to fund groups of people, not projects. I find that when you fund projects, you get into these situations where you have these very tactical decisions of, okay, we have this for 6 months, this for 3 months, this for 2 months. And, what do I do? Do I fire these people? Do I try and train the people that we have? What's the right approach? So bigger picture, longer picture, what I try and do is I try and build just badass teams that become this black box of destruction, that we feed them a business problem and they just destroy it. Easy to say, hard to do, especially in a situation like you're talking about where you have a C++ app and then you have a web app, right? Those aren't skills that translate easily. So I think you do have an added bit of complexity that most people don't. So understand and appreciate that. But what I would look at is I would, in your situation, given those diverse set of skills, similar to the DevOps discussion that I talked about, I would try and have a backlog for each of those products, because there are very distinct skills that unfortunately don't cross over as much as we'd like. And I would just treat them as products. And maybe you just need a 1 or 2 person C++ group. Maybe you need a 7 person, maybe 15 person, depending on the things you want to do in that coming year, right? So I would start to look at, hey, what are the things that we want to do in the Win app? How much do we want to invest in that? Let's build a team to support that. And let's let them go just destroy it. Same thing on the web app. So I'm hopeful that you have clarity around, and I know you're going to say it's agile, so long-term planning is hard, but what you can do is you can have an opinion, you can have a view of what life's going to look like. And if you have a good, strong product organization, thanks for the follow, J-Man. Yeah. So regarding J-Man, I very purposefully use the word forecast. We don't plan anything. And the reason I use forecast is to get everybody to understand this isn't a plan because they're always wrong. They never survive contact with the enemy, and you have a million enemies: time, customers, change, whatever. But there's real value in having visibility. So there's a couple of approaches that I take to help with that. We forecast at 3 different levels. So we forecast at the roadmap level. We forecast out at the roadmap what we think we're going to do over the next 3 or 4 quarters. Big, chunky things. That helps us as org leaders make sure we're staffed for the things that we want to do. When you first start doing that, and we do it once a month because we learn, we change. When you first start doing that, it's going to be a dynamic list. But as you do it over a year, what you'll find out is that you'll get real clarity around the next 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. You'll have some change, but not as much over time. You'll start to maintain clarity of who we want to be and where we want to go. We then, as I mentioned with the BRP, that's again a forecast of the next 6 sprints. So that's the second level that we do a forecast at. Again, the first few times you do it, we do that monthly as well. The first few times you do that, it's going to change drastically. But what you'll find over time is the next 3 sprints, 4 sprints hardly ever change. That 5th and 6th one might change, but not drastically. But that's a quarter away. So it's okay if that changes, but you have an idea of where you're going. Then the next is, of course, at the sprint level. Another key term that I like to use when talking about all of this is I treat it all as the fog. So we've all been in fog. We all understand that the things that are closest to us, we see way more clearly than we do the things that are further away. But what you have to do is you have to keep stepping into the fog. And as you step into the fog, you have to keep looking. You have to keep looking forward and figure out what's coming at you. I think that's a car out there. I might want to get on the sidewalk. I'm not sure. It's pretty deep in the fog. I don't need to dive on the sidewalk yet, but I need to know it's there. I need to be prepared to go left or right. That's one of the things that we talk about is we talk about how deep in the fog are these things. Do we need to get frantic and worried about that thing 9 months from now? No. It's deep in the fog. Let it be deep in the fog. Trust that you're going to step further into the fog and you're going to gain clarity over time, whether you need to worry about that or not. So those are the 2 things that I use a lot. I use the forecast term and I always talk about fog, about how deep in the fog is that, because people start to see stuff coming out there and they start to freak out and it doesn't help. You've got to educate people on how to handle that new information, because sometimes you'll introduce this process and teams will see things out in the future that they've never seen before and panic ensues. That doesn't help anything. So you have to spend time educating the team on what do we do with this information. We need to be aware of the stuff that's out there. We don't need to take action on it yet, but it's helpful to know that's coming. They 100% change, and they should. And if And if they don't change, if your plans don't change, Craystang, then you're not really paying attention. You're not really being a good steward of the product. You're just blindly marching down a path, right? So you're doing the right thing. So, Craystang, I believe 100%, and the reason I believe 100% is because I've done it a bunch, is that if you get in this 3-level planning approach, said planning, 3-level forecasting approach, then you'll start to gain clarity. It's not going to happen overnight. So you're going to put these processes in place, and it's not going to work right away. You've got to be patient. But what happens is you start to gain clarity, and you start to be able to forecast what you'll need 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and you'll be comfortable and confident. Why are you comfortable and confident? The key driver is you had an opportunity to see it at 12 months and then see it at 9 months. How has it changed? What should I do? Okay, so that's probably going to happen. 6 months out. Okay, we've been talking about that thing for 6 months and it hasn't changed. The likelihood of that changing between now and then is probably pretty low. So I'm going to start taking action about how do I handle that. Outsourcing for extra manpower, tricky. Can be done well, will often be done poorly. So I encourage you to baby step into that. Don't jump in head first. Remember experiments, right? So we talked a lot early in the stream about experiments. When something doesn't seem right, do a small experiment. That will help you. That will give you the confidence to try things without feeling like it's all or nothing, right? That's the common challenge, that it starts to feel like an all or nothing, like we're betting big. And if you're betting big, you're probably doing it wrong. I'm a big fan of Jim Collins and his books, Great by Choice and Good to Great. And one of the, I don't remember which one. Perfect, Craystang. I've got some content. I don't know. So I've given a talk about that a bunch. I'm trying to think if there's a video of it. I'll try and find a video of it. See. I can share it with you. Hopefully give you a little bit more detail. Search for that quick. So yeah, just with outsourcing, be careful. Have a good partner. Yeah, I don't see all the conference talks that are online. Yeah, I'm not seeing that conference talk as a video on YouTube. So okay, well, I'll keep looking, and if I find that, then I'll help you. I'll try and share that. So I've had good luck and bad luck with outsourcing. I'd be interested to hear what their experiences are like. The one key, okay, let me know when you're back. I was going to launch into a thing. All right, so while we're that, I'm going to take another 30-second break again. For those of you wondering why we run these ads prevent pre-rolls in the future, so that way new viewers that drop in aren't slammed with a pre-roll and bail. So my hope is to acquire new users by not subjecting them to pre-rolls. So 30-second break. For those of you that are here that haven't stepped away, what question can we answer? That's ultimately the goal for this stream, is to answer the questions that you have. What frustrations do you have? We talked to Ray Stang about some of the stuff that they're wrestling with. So what can you put on the table that you'd like help with? So you got 30 seconds to figure that out. Go. And if you subscribe, I don't think you see ads. So there's that. Okay. We are back. All right. So questions. Goal for this stream, as I mentioned, is to help everyone with whatever problems they may have. Started out talking about minimum viable everything, what that is, how I've used it in the past, why I've used it, how you can use it yourself. Started talking to Gray Stang, not Cry Stang, as I initially referred to them as. But fix that. Talking about how to deal with, it sounds like there's a pretty dynamic situation they're at where they have a Windows app with like C++ developers and then a web app, and how do they manage plan, resource planning, things like that. The approach that we suggested was the three-tier planning. And to me, the secret sauce for that approach is to do it often. So many organizations struggle because they plan or forecast once a year, maybe if you're lucky, ain't no problem. Maybe they'll do it twice a year or once every quarter. Forecasting is very hard, and the only way to get better at something is to do it often as you can. So that's why I like to, on a relatively rapid pace, update the forecasts. That can sound daunting to teams that update their forecasts or plans once a year, because they probably launch into like a 2 or 3 day planning session, and it's terrible, it's painful, and people hate life. They feel like they're like signing this blood oath or whatever. So yeah, we don't do that, because number one, I don't want to sit in a meeting for like 3 days. Number two, I just believe that's an unrealistic expectation that you're going to intuit this perfect plan in a certain number of hours. So I like to just accept the fact, taking an agile approach, that we really don't know. So let's just absorb new information, adjust as we go, and we'll get there in the end. You know, I often talk about, so I live in North Carolina. I often use, hey, we know we want to go to California. We want to go see a Dodgers game or whatever, or Comic-Con in San Diego. I know I need to get on 40 and drive west for like 3 days. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to micromanage every stop along the way. If I get hungry, if one of my 3 kids have to go to the bathroom, if whatever, who knows whatever happens. I just know this is my destination. As we progress westward, we're going to make the decisions that are appropriate for us. Maybe there's a wreck. Maybe there's traffic. Maybe we need to take a slight detour. I don't try and plan that out 100%. In doing so, you're going to be a total disaster because you're going to get it wrong. There's a million things that change, right? 3 kids in the back seat. A lot of stuff changes. So architecturally, Cray Stang, I don't know if there's a capability. I'm sure people have already thought about this or are discussing it. What is a way to abstract away as much of that logic into one code base? Is there a way to build a services layer to support and make all of those front ends as dumb as possible? If it's like Roblox, it might be difficult to make those dumb, which I get. But that's one of those things that I would investigate. Okay, so we came back from a 30-second ad. What else? What other things can we discuss? What problems are people having out there that we can help them work through? Or maybe it's just like, hey, it's almost a holiday season and I want to be done with work in hours. And I'm happy. I'm excited. Or maybe not. I don't know. But the goal here, again, is for you guys to get whatever help you need. The most important thing is that the help doesn't come from me. Big thing I'm after is that the help comes from the chat. That's where the real power is. Not this guy with this crazy painting of Walter Raleigh behind him. Which, by the way, you may have earned Walter points. You can use those Walter points to write a message that's highlighted. Like Agile Biker when he was here. Maybe he said he was cranky. Maybe he wanted to yell at me with highlights. So I really heard it. All right, so we've reached that point in the stream, my friends, where I can guarantee someone's going to jump in with a great question. About 95% of my streams go this route. We get towards the end. I start feeling like engagement is slowing down. People are running out of questions. Oh, yes, VA Agile. I can do that. That's a good point. Is not everybody staring at the chat. Okay. VA Agile. Feedback taken. Thank you. I am on it. So we get to this point. It's weird, around 45, 50 minutes in. And we kind of lose the steam a little bit, which is why I do the commercial breaks. To try and generate some more steam. And I start to ask, like, okay, well, I think we're running out of questions. Everyone's good. Everybody has everything they have. So I think I'm going to shut it down. Then I hit the pause, not literally the pause button, but the mental pause. And like some super fantastic question comes in. Like, okay, well, here we go. So I'm waiting for that to happen. It's this dance I do as I try and get the tone of the room as it might be in chat and figure out, do we have enough to keep going, or am I just going to be sitting here talking? That doesn't deliver a value. Oh, snap. See? Look at that. Thank you for proving me right, J-Man. Okay, so Agile J-Man. Hey, Lori Blue. Oh, man. Okay. So in response to J-Man's, or to VA Agile's request that I read the question before I start answering it, for those of you that are not staring at the chat like I am, J-Man's question is, how do I convince senior execs that want to scale that it may not be the answer? I would rewind all the way back to the start of the stream, which you were not here for, but that's okay. I would bring it back to the minimum viable everything approach that I take. And with that, there are two key things that I try and answer. And if I can answer these solidly, then I know it's the right thing to do. Question one is, what problem are we trying to solve that we have right now? Oftentimes, we're trying to solve problems that don't exist. We're trying to pretend that we know what's going to happen. That doesn't mean we're never going to solve that problem, but right now isn't the right time to attack that problem. So if those execs can explain to you, this is the problem we're addressing by scaling up. If they can clearly articulate a business reason why it's important, then that's step one. Okay, that should provide you with the information, because usually what happens is when you get in situations like this where somebody wants to do something and another person doesn't understand why, 99% of the time, it's because somebody has a piece of information that the other one doesn't. So you need to seek to fill in those gaps and educate each other on the why, the business value of what you're trying to do. So I'm hopeful that the senior execs will say, sure, J-Man, come in, let's talk. I'd be happy to explain why this is so important. They sit down, they get on a whiteboard, they pull out some spreadsheets about this is why we believe this makes sense. If we do this, this happens. We all make money, we retire. And you're like, yeah, that's awesome. We should go do that. So that's step one. Step two then is the minimum viable approach. What's the least amount of change we can introduce to help us solve that problem? So I'm assuming that they'll be able to sit down and explain the problem they're solving and how they believe scaling will solve that problem. Then it's about what's the least amount that you can invest to make that change happen. Think of it like a product. What's the least amount of work we can do to solve that problem for that customer to deliver the value? Take that approach. So that's what I would do. Okay, VA Agile, what are your thoughts on no estimates? I've been down this path of experimenting with, do we not do any estimates at all? I even proposed it to a team that we stop story pointing stories. This was a very mature team, one of the best teams I've ever built. Super proud of that group. They just crushed everything that got put in front of them. And as we went through refinement sessions and planning sessions, I started to question the value of the story points. So I forget what the meeting was, but I asked them, I said, what do you guys think about stopping the use of story points? Because I'm starting to question the value that they deliver in our planning. And I'm just not sure we're getting the bang for the buck. So number one, they all fell out of their chairs because they were shocked because they never thought I would ask something like that, because I've always been a huge proponent of story pointing and how important it was and being really engaged and all those things. The team, they were very mature. They contemplated it. They discussed it. We had a long discussion. In the end, what they came back with was they really valued the stress is the word I'm going to use, but it's not really stressful. The stress of having to throw a number on a story to appear and then having to be in a dialogue about it. Like, okay, if I think this is an 8, I got to be prepared to explain to my peers why I think it's an 8 versus a 3. So they found that it really created a healthy dialogue for them and for each other to ensure that they really understood the stories before they started working on it. So as the most mature team I've ever been a part of, they completely could have said, hey, we're going to create that dialogue ourselves. But they viewed the estimating, the story pointing, as the catalyst for really discovering what the story was. So to me, estimates are a tool that are used to generate dialogue. If it's done well, it generates real, healthy, valuable dialogue that the team uses to be more confident that, hey, when we put this thing in the sprint, we're going to be able to deliver on it because we actually know what the hell we're doing. If people throw numbers in story pointing and planning poker, and there is no healthy dialogue, then I bet your sprint planning, your sprint execution isn't as good as it could be. I bet you get frustrated with it often. I bet your sprints are bumpier than you would like. But when you have a team that really engages in that healthy discussion about what a story is or isn't, then your sprints will go much better. And those estimates, that estimation process, was the catalyst for that dialogue for us. So in the end, the team decided to keep story pointing because they saw the value that it generated, not directly, but indirectly, in that they believed it helped them execute more effectively on their sprints because they were more confident in every piece of work that they were pulling into the sprint once it was ready for that sprint. So no estimates is one of those things that to me sounds cool, but in the end, I think if you really treat an estimate as it is, as a tool for generating healthy dialogue, healthy conversation about the work, as opposed to a life or death commitment, which is how it unfortunately gets used against a lot of people. If it can be used in the right way, estimates are good. The problem isn't estimates. The problem is how it's used against people. So the no estimates movement can often be used as a battle axe against the bad practices that are out there. When in reality, what I believe the right answer is to fix the bad practices. So that's my view on the no estimates world. Brian Ripley, huge proponent of no estimates, good fan of mine. Vasco Duarte, I believe that's how you say his last name, is a part of the podcast network that I started. So we have some people in my inner circle of coaches and content creators that I appreciate and trust, that believe very differently than I do, but that's okay. It's about finding what's right for you and your organization. So that's my view on no estimates. Cool. All right. Well, we have reached that hour mark, my friends. I appreciate everyone for tuning in today, taking time out, VA Agile, for staying up late. I know you do it every week, and I'm going to thank you every time for doing it. That's fantastic. I appreciate it greatly. Thanks for all the new folks that came in. Thanks for all the folks that have been here before. Fantastic to continue to see you. You guys are the reason why I do this. Seeing that chat scroll, that's what makes me happy. That's what keeps me coming back. So keep on coming back. It's fantastic. I will see you next Friday. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the time with family. And if you're available next Friday, we'll chat. All right. See you, everybody. Thanks again.